as it's worked out for them before. They're not going to really change things up if it ain't broke.
No, absolutely not. On the side of Lion Guard, I mean, did you see anything that's kind of encouraging? Rearward's performance was mostly defensive. He really never got the chance to be an initiator on that Hunt Bats.
Well, the problem was that failed gank attempt in the left-hand side,
Yes.
which wasted just too much time. And not only that, it gave up first blood to Ataraxia because of those 3 archers. The aggressiveness between Flurry Q and Frezzy worked well at levels 1 through 2, but it just didn't pan out for them. They have to figure out a way to extend their dual lane advantage, because that's the one key component. If you can get one advantage in one lane, you can transition that into the jungle side and start controlling those objectives.
You're right. I mean, Obey for Ataraxia, for Obey rather, he just had the pressure all along, was consistently invading those buffs. Flurry Q secured a lot of them with the Uller, but who was still on the back foot. Serket, the first pick here for Captain Twig. Giannis and Fafnir answered back by Lion Guard. The Morrigan here. So could be solo for Maniac, but
Potentially.
I've seen a little bit of Prime playing this Morrigan on stream. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a mid lane Morrigan.
Well, time to experiment, I guess, for Obey Alliance, at least in the SPL category. So having the Morrigan here with Amaterasu is a good idea to have that movement speed here just to match out this Giannis play, because you want to make sure that not only you're going to be able to chase the Giannis through the threshold, but that you're able to run away from him and his portals.
That's a great point. Matching that mobility with the Morgan. Osiris going to be locked in for Lion Guard. And I love this pick because not only is Maniac so comfortable on it, he's been dominant on it so far here in Season 4, but Ducky was a very proficient Osiris, really when Osiris wasn't being played during Season 3, so you know he's comfortable on this guy.
Absolutely. Ducky loves playing these aggressive gods. He's shown us time in and time out why he's a great soul laner. When he was playing in Season 3 in the group lands, he was able to solo a few members there consistently, so having this Osiris for him could turn the table, at least in that matchup.
Freya locked in. Haven't seen a whole lot of her in the SPL, and Bologna going to be the answer to Osiris. Maybe Maniac can show Ducky how he's supposed to play that matchup. That's the idea, right? Like, solo laners love this kind of stuff, don't they? It's like, oh, they're playing what I played? I'm going to play what they played and show them how they should have done it. That's such a solo laner mentality.
Magical Hunter is definitely a great idea in terms of dealing with these warriors in the late game.
Yeah.
So the tether from Osiris is going to mitigate some of that damage, but it's a Freya. Once she gets her 4 to 5 items, she's just going to absolutely melt through you like butter. Not to mention, the Bologna is available here for Maniac this time as well. So he's going to be able to be a presence as well in the late game.
Absolutely. Scotty, the last selection there for Flurry Q. Going to try and take it to Freya in that early laning phase. Ataraxia going to have to handle one of the most winningest gods in the SPL right now. Scotty's really rocketing up there.
Fighting early game versus late game. Scotty is definitely a god that controls a lot of the pressure in the early laning phase, especially considering you have Frezzy playing this Fafnir as your dual lane partner. You got to be extra cautious here if you're on the dual lane side, but not to mention, or not to forget rather, Emilzy playing this god here is going to be very aggressive on the Amaterasu. One of the best warriors you could ever want as the support role next to Hercules.
Yeah, excellent clear, decent peel, though really does rely on that ultimate in total, but just giving your hunter that speed and or damage boost can absolutely help out in that laning phase. And immediately, Emilzy and Ataraxia are going to look to take it to Flurry Q and Frezzy. Emilzy going to take the majority of the poke, I would say there, but he does have that switch stance, which means that he's going to be able to heal up pretty nicely.
Going to be doing a lot of damage with a passive as well from Emilzy, just amplifying the damage. And Maniac at level 1, just there's no stopping him. He's just using his potential to outbox Maniac completely.
Ducky puts Maniac down to very, very low HP. Maniac on the receiving end of the Osiris this time around. You can see Rearward here invading Maniac's blue buff, but while that was happening, Captain Twig was on his speed. Looks like Rearward may have started on the enemy speed. Twig realized that and went to that of his own. Twig gonna knock away this blue buff as well. So both buffs stolen away by the junglers here.
Gonna swap it out. It's gonna hurt out a little bit on the side of Ducky, but not if they able to find this kill early on. Maniac doesn't want to stop clearing outside the tower. Normally, soul laners at this position in a 1v2 spot will just let the wave enter the tower, but not Maniac. He's not one to just back down from any sort of encounter.
Never, never for the solo laner. Red buff invaded there by Lion Guard successfully. Pretty prime. Gonna have to watch as Flurry Q walks away with his precious, precious damage buff. But Emilzy and Ataraxia, they stayed in lane and got a little bit of pressure here. They're They're going to turn it on to Frezzy. Flurry Q zoned out from this wave quite a bit. And look at where Twig is. Around the back, he looped around the back of the towers to snag away the enemy back camps. And now the 3 will secure the enemy red buff as well.
Invades are nice, but the timing of the invades need to be well calculated. Despite stripping the red buff away from Obey Alliance, they gave up that whole wave, which still gave Ataraxia and Emilzy level 3. So once Frezzy and Flurry Q got back to the lane, they were still level 2. They couldn't really contest it, not to mention the positioning wasn't in their advantage. And with the rotation from Captain Twig, now not only did they control the lane, but they also got 2-for-1 buffs.
Emilzy's in a lot of trouble right now. He's gonna get towards Shadow Nightmare with the dash, but Caldy are still on him, rearward, smacking him with the club. Emilzy trying to get away. He does have the speed buff, a nice slow coming out of Flurry Q with a stun from Pretty Prime's enough. Emilzy jukes the Unstable Vortex and the Ice Shards, can't do so with the hammer. Finally, Emilzy falls to the hand of Frezzy.
But it's only the first blood for the support. It's not that big of a deal here if you're on the side of Obey Alliance. If there's ever somebody you want to get first blood to, it's got to be Frezzy, as well as the person to die is going to be your support. Still having a decent advantage in the experience department. They're not too far behind here in terms of the support category.
Sometimes we see players miss the Unstable Vortex kind of by accident. They're just walking, and with how the ability moves, it's kind of difficult to understand where it's going to go. That was a conscious juke by Emilzy to sit in the center and have the Unstable Vortex go around him and then juke out the Ice Shards. Really impressive play out of the support, despite falling for the first blood. And like you mentioned, it is onto Frezzy, and while it's a support player, so you usually don't want to give that your first blood, Frezzy's so aggressive that maybe that is the right character to give the first blood to.
Potentially, depending on how he wants to build, right? He could go for Shoes the Mad Guy, penetration onto Fafnir. It's not something you necessarily want all the time because you want to still be relevant in terms of gold category. Usually you want to get the Traveler Shoes, but having the Fafnir onto Frezzy, he's going to want to dive that backline, so it wouldn't surprise me, rather, if he takes this first blood gold bounty to his advantage, trying to find more kills and more setup for his teammates.
I mean, last time around he was behind early on and still went for the Shoes of Focus on the Fafnir, so maybe he will go for a damage option or continue to look for that cooldown on the Fafnir. Ready to get back in game here. 3 minutes in. Lion Guard, they're up 1 kill, but as you mentioned, it was on to the support. And Obey's team composition, again, is not early game focused. They really don't seem to put a high price on that early game.
No, not at all. And no exploitation, rather, as well. This Freya has been left unchecked for the most part. Sitting at level 5, Flurry Q still struggling at level 4, and not even having to use Purification Beads in any sort of encounter, making it more difficult to really shut down this Freya in the early game. And Flurry Q is going to probably have to look for some aggression play, considering the fact that he has this global ultimate from Shadow Nightmare.
But it is going to be difficult with him rushing this Transcendence, don't you think, Tole? I mean, he kind of needs that mobility to match that of Ataraxia, who's already finished his boots.
Especially once this Fatalis comes online from Ataraxia, Flurry Q, without having the boots right available to him, and this timing is not going to favor Flurry Q. If he doesn't finish boots before Transcendence, Ataraxia is going to have a huge power play using his mobility to his advantage.
Especially because I think Ataraxia at this rate will finish the Fatalis before Flurry Q gets his boots. Nice wall there from rearward. Frezzy already in the dragon form through space of time, not going to hit Twig, but going to cut off his escape path. Serket still so mobile, the Twig able to get away despite the 2 ultimates burned there by Lion Guard.
Surprising that Lion Guard electing to put pressure on the right instead of the left. Freya is one of these gods that you just have to take advantage of before the mobility and before the damage. Not a Serket that has 2 different escape mechanics, a taunt that can deter you from chasing her down, and an ultimate that could push you away.
And tank boots for Captain Twig. We've seen this squad in particular during the Season 3 meta where tank boots got buffed and everyone was starting to pick them up. This squad, Twig, Prime, Ataraxia, they were the first to really start buying them in bulk. And right now, Twig maybe just taking these for a test ride as Ataraxia and Emilzy are able to secure the red buff, basically 2v4. So late rotation there from Lion Guard. Blink and freeze from rearward. Pretty Prime in a lot of trouble. Shards of Ice popped as well, but he transforms into the Serket and jumps out of the damage. Double Serket ultimate onto Frezzy. There's the Valkyrie's discretion, but not enough damage to bring down the support. Ducky, Lord of the Afterlife, up over the wall, but a Shadow Nightmare caught out the silence. Not enough to stop him from getting through the portal. What ends up in no kills certainly wasn't lacking in flash there as Obey making some hot plays.
I like the idea that Pretty Prime had trying to double Circuit, but they didn't allow the first Circuit ultimate to really do the damage before resetting that buff. Gold Fury, though, going in the way of Obey Alliance, very aggressive, but they lose two.
Rearward, he finds one there on the Maniac. Ataraxia chased down by Frezzy, and the old support puts down his former Hunter, getting some revenge onto the Hunter from Obey. As you mentioned, Obey get the Gold Fury and the Oracles, but lose 3 in the process, putting them down about 200 gold in total.
Having an early Gold Fury is definitely a good idea because in Season 4, Gold Fury is worth a little bit more, but honestly, losing 3 members here this early on is going to allow Lion Guard now to get a little bit more experience in tow. Flurry Q was a level behind here, having to try to get back into the game is very important for this Scotty that's trying to rush this Transcendence, now finishing it off, but look at the side of Ataraxia here. He's almost finished with that Fatalis.
Flurry Q has been a part of all 4 kills so far for Lion Guard, but still, like you mentioned, a level down, still having trouble in terms of finishing off his mobility, and Ataraxia is going to be able to finish that Fatalis long before the boots are ready for Flurry Q. Twig, the receiving end of Ducky's aggression on this right-hand side. Lord of the Afterlife already used through space, and time was fired to try and get Lion Guard in position to chase down the jungler. Shadow Nightmare guarantees the Unstable Vortex this time around. Twig falls down, 5 kills on the board for Lion Guard. Maniac forced to use his ultimate defensively as well, and with Pretty Prime just worried about securing his jungler's speed, Tier 1 tower on the right likely to fall.
Maniac could have potentially used that Eagles rally just to save the life of Captain Twig if he used it onto Shadow Nightmare perfectly timed, but as a result of the Gold Fury going down earlier on, nice blink over the wall by the new jungler, securing the Tier 1 tower and the kill onto the Soul Laner, and the timing of this couldn't be any better for Lion Guard as Gold Fury is down.
Oh, Flurry Q's in a lot of trouble here on this left side, Tolly. He's got no boots. Emilzy with that dazzling offense, and Emilzy gonna secure it. Both ultimates expended, but Obey is willing to use that to get themselves on the board. Flurry Q just punished for his item selection right now.
There's a difference between the early game and the late game, like we mentioned before. There's so much pressure on the right that Ataraxia is looking like he's getting off to the right momentum that he needs to get this Freya online in a position to get the damage and start winning these team fights. Shadow Nightmare in the back, forced to use that beast. The portal finally does come out as well for him.
Nice stun there by Pretty Prime, using that stealth to close the gap there and get in Shadow Nightmare's face before he realized what was happening.
And because of the whole early game versus late game dynamic, this is why Captain Twig elected to go for these reinforced Greaves. He doesn't really care about the damage. He wants that 20% crowd control reduction, making sure that Rearward isn't going to stun him out for a very long time, as well as Ducky with a tether.
And Rearward's had an excellent game so far on this Ymir. 2-0 and 3 for the new jungler for Lion Guard. Ataraxia and Emilzy zoning Flurry Q out because of that lack of mobility, but the cavalry is here. Shadow Nightmare hits Emilzy with that through space and time, but it's not enough to do anything at all. Ultimate expended there, and Emilzy and Ataraxia walk away safe and sound.
Also having their Tier 1 tower if they wanted to retreat, despite not having Valkyrie's discretion available. The Purification Beast was still up for Ataraxia. He was still in a very comfortable position to be able to get away. Not only that, Emilzy having the meditation. Lion Guard need to figure out a better plan if they want to shut down this Freya.
Rearward almost with that blink ready. 12 more seconds until he can use that engage or disengage tool. Really put good use to this relic early on. He's up 2 levels right now on to Captain Twig, who's had a tough time on this Circuit. But he's been the focus, like you mentioned, and it's allowed Ataraxia to really not worry about it on the left-hand side. Flurry Q's got to worry about it. He's seen this one before, and Emilzy once more picks up the Hunter in the mid lane. Twig uses that ultimate to try and buy himself some time, but Shadow Nightmare still finds the kill onto the jungler. Maniac rotates around the backside, but everyone is worried about him. And as a result, Lion Guard are forced to back up a little bit. They'll have a wave here, Tolly, and they might be able to get this tower pretty easily.
They definitely need to if they want to take advantage of the fact that they have these numbers in the mid lane. Nice blink from Rearward, able to wall them off for a little bit. Ducky doing his best zoning attempts here, but the rest of Lion Guard are pummeling away at the tower. They still have some minions to be able to tank it.
But they have no Hunter right now, Tolly, and they're lacking the tower damage necessary to get this Tier 1. Maniac has teleported back in on the right. Pretty Prime still pretty low, but Maniac jumps in looking for Frezzy. Amealzy can't quite find him with the reflective mirror. Very, very close there, but Frezzy survives by the skin of his teeth.
Nice little wall from rearward just to be able to stop that secondary part of the bludgeon. And like you mentioned before, without the damage from Flurry Q, despite all that time, about 30 to 45 seconds Lion had to get that tier 1 tower without any sort of real physical hunter damage, not able to secure that tier 1 in mid lane despite being able to have the numbers advantage for such a long time.
Flurry Q still not with the boots, and Ataraxia has completed that Fatalis, so Ataraxia may not even need Amealzy at this stage.
And not only this, Flurry Q doesn't have Aegis. Elected to go for that Purification Beads, making sure that any sort of CCs between the Whoop and as well as the stun from the ultimate of Amealzy could get negated, but it doesn't matter if you're negating the CC if you're just going to take all that damage anyway.
Frezzy jumps up over the wall, trying to steal away the enemy red, but a little bit early. Unfortunate timing there for the support as Ataraxia gets that for himself. Twig frozen out by rearward. Lots of damage onto the jungler, forced to jump away and back right as the Gold Fury spawns. Lion Guard trying to control this Gold Fury pit. They're up in kills, but even in gold, Ducky just getting shredded by Ataraxia. There's a stun from Frezzy through space and time, dissects the team fight nicely. Ataraxia forced up into that Valkyrie's discretion. Maniac doing his best to zone on the backside. Meditation popped by Amealzy, but it's not enough to save the life of his solo laner. Shadow Nightmare puts number 3 on the board for himself, and Amealzy jumps in. Gold Fury is secured by Lion Guard, but Ataraxia cleans up Frezzy.
Taking away the support player and taking away the life of the solo laner. Pretty Prime in a little bit of trouble, but he transforms into the Freya, going up into the sky, gets a kill onto the mid laner of Lion Guard. That's 3 dead, and it's going to be a turnaround here. Nowhere to go for rearward. This has been a total series of turnarounds here for Obey. They were the ones that got the earlier Gold Fury, and they lost everybody, but this time it's Lion Guard that got the second one, but they got decided.
Lion Guard doesn't have enough to answer to Obey's aggression. Flurry Q makes a nice play to at least get something in terms of kills for Lion Guard there with the turnaround, piercing cold, but Captain Twig the only one to fall from Obey. All 5 dead for Lion Guard. Couple respawning right now, but Obey willing to give up that Gold Fury for that sense. That's been the story, Toli. You get the Gold Fury, you lose multiple members for it.
As long as the game is even, Obey Alliance are happy to go into the late game here. They have Amealzy, they have Ataraxia, they have Pretty Prime that could turn into either of those two depending on the situation. So Obey Alliance, they're very comfortable with giving up the Gold Fury as long as they can even return some kills. They didn't necessarily need to find all 5 members, but because of how Lion Guard engaged that, with Ducky going up and down with his Lord of the Afterlife, that means the rest of Lion Guard was fully committed towards that team fight.
And they fully committed, all right. They lose all 5 members, but do get the objective. Twig has had still a little bit of a tough game on the circuit, been focused out pretty heavily by Lion Guard, but is now even levels with rearward, who blinks in and finds the freeze onto Amealzy, but a great taunt from Captain Twig prevents the follow-up damage onto Amealzy, who probably would have been safe either way. But now Twig, now Amealzy knows Twig's got his back.
That's something that you definitely want to take advantage of, the synergy between your jungler and support. You're always holding hand in hand in the jungle alongside your mid laner, but holding a lot of hands is Lion Guard as they try to invade that speed bump, but taking a lot of damage is both Maniac and rearward.
Yeah, Maniac still has that ultimate. Gonna be safe for the time being, and Lion Guard concedes the enemy speed to Captain Twig. Still not quite level 12. Rearward has dinged that second relic level, but hasn't backed to pick it up yet. What would you pick up here if you're the Sumir jungle?
Honestly, he also has the Relic Dagger trying to minimize some of his cooldown, so he has the offensive blink option. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes into even a Sunder potentially, trying to find some more kills. Freeze, Sunder, the Ice Carpet will do a lot of damage.
Last breath onto rearward. Amealzy there as well to try and focus down that jungle. Ymir through space of time just barely misses Twig, who dashes out of danger. Maniac finds the kill onto rearward, and now Ducky's in the wrong spot. Up, down with the Lord of the Afterlife, but a great portal from Shadow Nightmare creates some space for the solo laner. Flurry Q is here, and the focus is on the Maniac, but it's just not quite enough damage with Kaldir. Amealzy still creating zones there for Obey to make sure that their solo laner and jungler are safe. Obey get away with the kill, losing none on their side.
Obey Alliance doing a great job baiting, specifically from Captain Twig. With that 20% crowd control reduction, the tether stun from Ducky didn't really allow Shadow Nightmares through space and time to confirm the damage, and Obey Alliance won that team fight even without Ataraxia being there.
Tier 1 tower falls in favor of Obey. Teleport was used there by Ducky to try and defend the tower, but even without a traditional physical hunter, Ataraxia and co are able to snag away that 500 gold for themselves. It's a risky invade here, totally, with Emilzy low on mana, but Rearward just cannot quite find the Blink Freeze.
And that's the one problem with freezes in general for Ymir players. Sometimes they'll be in range, but because of the travel time of the freeze from the location to the end time, it's easy for a god that has so much mobility, such as Ataraxia's Freya, just to be able to backstep it.
I love this Spear of the Magus pickup here by Ataraxia. Needs a pen option. We usually see a ring in this spot, an attack speed boost, something to try and get that Freya to get more mileage out of that Pulse Irradiate combination. But this is a penetration option that is about helping out Pretty Prime in that mid lane in terms of his damage as well.
Not only that, it's also a good idea for the early to mid game because Obsidian Shard is more about the late game focus. You have that 33% out of that item, and at this point, there's not that much magical defense to fully benefit Ataraxia for going this heavy penetration style.
Yeah, there isn't a lot of magical defense. I mean, just the Heartward Amulet trying to help out there. Emilzy trying to help out his team defend their left-hand side. Dazzling offense on a Flurry Q, and Captain Twig immediately blinks into the backside and cleans up Flurry Q. Maniac teleported in. Ducky trying to handle 3 on the front, but Twig throws Frezzy into the enemy team, and Ducky forced to use that Lord of the Afterlife away. Pretty Prime cleans up Ducky by cosplaying as Ataraxia on that Freya. Frezzy whooped and dead. Prime, 3 kills, double kill in that engagement, and Obey marches down this left-hand side.
Lion Guard overstayed their welcome. Now it's Rearward in a world of trouble. The wall's not going to save you this time, buddy. The rest of Obey Alliance trying to get their 4th kill of this encounter. Despite losing that tier 1 tower on the left-hand side, Obey Alliance, they pick up 4. They respond in kind with a tier 1 of their own, and more than likely, they're not going to be done here. They're going to go for this tier 2.
Through space and time, trying to pick off someone who is low HP, but that is
I think it was Captain Twig.
An optimistic shot there. Down the lane, everyone can see it coming. Shadow Nightmare not able to find it home with that one. Tier 2 tower the focus now, but Emilzy, he wants Flurry Q, actually turns it around and forces 2 relics with 1 ultimate. Nice play out of the support from Obey, and as the rest of the squad cleans up the tier 2 tower on the left, Obey now in a commanding position, up about 6,000 gold.
Emilzy's so smart, man. So hitting 2 shots onto Flurry Q Scotty originally, he recognized that Scotty was not even in a position to defend the tier 2 tower, but Shadow Nightmare wanted to go in to defend it. So as a result, hitting the 2 times, the 3rd stun, the 3rd hit was going to stun Shadow Nightmare guaranteed. So taking 2 relics for 1 now puts Obey in a good spot to be able to regroup after they spend all that gold in hand to start going for this Gold Fury. And Emilzy's ultimate now is going to be up before those 2 important relics.
Captain Twig trying to invade the enemy's speed, tosses Rearward away from his buff and secures it with the auto. Twig not deterred from the early focus that Lion Guard is putting onto him, having a nice game now, 2, 3, and 7. Third on his team rather in terms of player damage. Emilzy, number 2 on the support Amaterasu.
I mean, that's what happens whenever you just press 4 and left click on the enemy hunter that doesn't have the Aegis Amulet. Captain Twig was 2 levels behind earlier on, but now he's a level ahead of this Ymir jungle, and yet again, Lion Guard focusing so much on the right-hand side. But this timing, though, is a little bit unfortunate. Obey Alliance could potentially look for the Gold Fury on the left as it is up, but Ataraxia did have to back to base.
Lion Guard, their focus is onto this Portal Demon. 4 members here for Obey. Ataraxia still on the trek back from base, as you mentioned. Emilzy wants to engage around this Fire Giant. It locks Rearward in, forces out that Shards of Ice, but Shadow Nightmare is the real focus. Captain Twig is on him the whole time. Emilzy picks up Shadow Nightmare, but Frezzy answers back onto Twig. Ataraxia handling Ducky on the back, and is able to find the kill very, very easily. Freya is swinging now. Got that 4th item. Prime once more trying to do his best Ataraxia impression. No kills this time with that Valkyrie's Discretion, but Lion Guard on the run.
Doing a great job as Obey Alliance. Ataraxia finding a wood, but nobody else is going to be able to take advantage of that. Finding a 2 for 1, and like we mentioned before, without the Purification Beads onto Shadow Nightmare, that was the prime target for the rest of Obey Alliance. Without that mid laner, there is no threshold, there is no portals for the safety.
But Blink in here from Rearward. Lion Guard don't want to give up this objective. Ataraxia is not going to fall, but Lion Guard do secure that Portal Demon.
At what cost?
Oh, but the rest of Lion Guard comes through the portal. Flurry Q, he's gonna fall to Maniac, but 3 members are here, full HP. Where did Shadow Nightmare just go? Erased off the map by Pretty Prime. Now Frezzy and Ducky, they had the numbers, but have no longer. Ducky, he's gonna fall here to the rest of Obey, who just say, keep on coming, Lion Guard. What else you got?
What a whoop from Ataraxia. As 3 members from Lion Guard entered the portal, they found a kill instantly onto Shadow Nightmare. Obey Alliance, they just cannot be stopped right now. They're going to be doing the Fire Giant here, even expecting potentially Frezzy from going through this portal, but instead going to play it very safe, allow the members of Obey to get this Fire Giant. And this is the same situation as they were in the last game. They're down 7,000 gold. They still have Phoenixes, but they gave Obey the Fire Giant.
What a play there by Obey. I really thought the fight was going to turn whenever 3 members popped out, but Shadow Nightmare just got obliterated by the damage from Pretty Prime. And we usually don't talk, we've seen a little bit more of the Morrigan. She's starting to become a little bit more popular in terms of multiple players playing her and really multiple roles, but she just does so much damage in the late game. Rearward whooped. See ya, dude. I mean, you're level 13 at 21 minutes up against an Ataraxia Freya who's level 18. You're done, son.
This is the mobility we were talking about that Amaterasu can provide for your team. Captain Twig, though, trying to get a little bit of damage, forces out the Aegis from Flurry Q, but not before the ultimate. Ultimates being exchanged, Ataraxia looking for the whoop, but with everyone else from Lion Guard going to back on off. A nice little small marginal victory for Obey Alliance now, as they're going to continue to push down these towers. Flurry Q is going to be heavily exposed without that relic.
Yeah, no Aegis, no ultimate either. Twig has really just been a nuisance in the enemy backline all game long. Going back to Pretty Prime on this Morrigan, he's just doing so much damage at this stage that I don't think Lion Guard really have an answer. He's top of the player damage charts right now at 21 minutes. Just been absolutely killing it with the transformations and just the raw damage that the Morrigan can put out.
And he's also basically turning himself into Ataraxia for a majority of these team fights. This is a great idea to take a late game character such as the Freya and have the Morrigan to be able to transform into her to be able to double your damage output, basically.
Yeah, no Runic Shield quite yet for Ducky. He's only been able to complete 3 items, and the opposite there, and not the Runic Shield that reduces magical power, but the Jade Emperor's Crown that reduces physical power, picked up by Rearward. I don't know if that's, I mean, it's really not picked up for the passive in this scenario, right, Tully? It's more about just the cheap stats that it can provide to the Guardian jungle.
Absolutely. For 2150 gold, you're getting a lot of protection there, 60 specifically, but having Ataraxia and Morrigan being able to turn into the Freya anyway, it's not really worth going into this physical protection item. You're trying to really make sure you win these team fights, and reducing the 30 physical power on the side of Twig, Emilzy, and Maniac is not going to be the deciding factor.
No, as well as, you know, we see the Sunder pick up here for Ducky. That was at a point where Lion Guard is a little bit farther ahead, but I think in some situations you have to predict that you're going to start losing some team fights due to Ataraxia and Pretty Prime being Ataraxia V2 basically on this Morrigan. You got to kind of itemize for the later stages, not what's happening right now. What's happening right now is that Flurry Q is getting chased down by Emilzy, and again, he gets the relic for the ultimate, and that dazzling offense is on such a low cooldown. It doesn't matter. Pretty Prime actually transformed into the Giannis and tried to snipe out Flurry Q. He did so successfully, but doesn't kill him, and Pretty Prime gets trolled by his own ult.
Interesting little encounter there between the Giannis portals. Either way, the rest of Obey Alliance, they still have Fire Giant for an additional 1 minute. All the towers from Lion Guard are off the map. This is the time that Obey strikes some of these Phoenixes.
But there is a problem for Obey in that they don't have that traditional physical hunter that can knock down these objectives well. Pretty Prime had the option to change into Flurry Q and do so, but no longer using that changeling to try and get the kill. Ducky trying to frontline, but he's only level 13. That's a difficult ask of the Osiris. There's the ultimate for both Rearward and Frezzy. Ataraxia himself up into that Valkyrie's discretion. Phoenix still stands. Ducky able to survive with 1 HP. Maniac going to be in a bit of trouble sliding around on that permafrost, but it's just not enough as middle Phoenix does eventually fall, and Obey really isn't even that low.
No, not at all. They're just doing a great job sustaining with their Fire Giant, even the meditation being procced. The ultimate from Shadow Nightmare not on the mark, but putting a positional advantage to dive this backline.
Frezzy jumps in and is immediately exploded. Twig gets some revenge on his former support. Lion Guard now has to defend with 4 members. Another meditation used by Obey to top off anyone who was a little bit weak in that scenario. Left side, Phoenix falls to the damage of Obey. Twig jumping in, trying to find Shadow Nightmare. Freeze on a Twig and the portal as well, and Flurry Q is able to answer back, but Prime picks up Ducky, number 6 for the Morrigan in this game. Obey cannot quite siege that Titan room yet, but it's looking more and more likely to be a 2-0 victory in their favor.
Obey Alliance are closing out this split almost to near perfection with that one loss to elevate, looking like the strongest team here coming out of Europe.
They've been absolutely killing it, and this is not a team that I think a lot of people expected to get this strongest team in Europe right now title coming into the spring split. Everyone, of course, Energy is the favorite in that scenario, but everyone's talking about Team Dignitas, Variety's new team. He leaves Obey, goes and forms this other super team with a couple other great members from Europe, and then Valen Squadron, now Enix. A lot of people have a lot of very high expectations for them. They follow through with those expectations, look phenomenal for this entire season, but none of them have matched up to Obey's level of play. All 3 of those teams I just brought up, Toli, suffered a 2-0 defeat at Obey's hands.
Absolutely. Obey Alliance are looking like a totally different team now, and they were able to bounce back despite having a few roster switches between Maniac joining and now Emilzy.
That's what I was going to bring up, is what changed for them. I mean, their level of play going into Worlds last season was high, but I think that a lot of people thought they overperformed at Worlds. They just stepped up and made some plays when they maybe weren't the second best team in the world. They certainly look like it right now, if not the best team in the world. What changed for them?
The way they're approaching these team fights has just been on point. Not only that, even when they are on the defensive and it's the enemy team where Lion was being the main initiators this game, Obey still found ways to get back into the game and get something in return. And this time around, they were focusing on Flurry Q for a majority of the time. Every time there was action in the soul lane, Obey would get something in return in the duel lane.
It just, overall, for me, I think the biggest difference is Emilzy. I mean, he has just been so impressive in every god that he's played so far this season. And Maniac has done everything that Variety did for this team, if not more in some instances. I'm comfortable saying that. Right side Phoenix, that's the last structure standing, defending the Titan for Lion Guard. All 5 members of Obey with that Fire Giant buff around their way. Shadow Nightmare gets caught there by Captain Twig, knew exactly where the mid laner was going to be. Twig forced to use both his relics, but he's going to get away without much worry. Shadow Nightmare being down makes this defense even harder for Lion Guard. Right side Phoenix, still 1 HP, but will now fall to the damage of Ataraxia. Prime in a bad spot, but he transforms, and there he's ready to fight as Ataraxia now. Emilzy with his mid laner, pretending to be the hunter, puts down another member of Lion Guard. 24 kills on the board for Obey.
Ataraxia just killed Frezzy right on the fountain, trying to get revenge earlier on for that solo kill, finding the Titan as well. Obey Alliance get a 2-0 clean victory here, despite